there were so many emotions of grief, in the sense that I can't believe it took me this long to finally allow myself to experience this. And all of a sudden I'm somebody in my 30s experiencing what most teenagers do, right? And young adults. And there's a bit of grieving going, wow, that's tough that I never allowed myself to experience this. And then also just like, yeah, oh my goodness, I can't believe, like, this is what love songs are written about. This is all these things that I've heard about my whole life and always wanted to understand, and I've been hiding from it because I grew up being brainwashed to believe that my feelings were terrible. And so I think just seeing how my body responds versus the way I wanted it to respond with women, and it never did, and then to finally, to finally get to experience that is pretty wild.
Hi, I'm Isaac Archuleta, founder and CEO of iAmClinic, an outpatient psychotherapy practice in Denver, Colorado, offering in-person and online sessions. Welcome to Queer RelationTips, a podcast devoted to helping you create the love lives and relationships you crave. In this episode, I talk with Trey Pearson, founder, owner, and lead singer of the Christian rock band Everyday Sunday. In 2016, Trey came out as gay, and it changed his life, both his heterosexual marriage and his religious career. He released his first solo album, Love is Love, in 2017 and has developed Trey's Safe Space, a Facebook group offering weekend retreats where LGBTQ individuals, religious or not, can share their stories and questions and find support without judgment. In this conversation, Trey and I reflect on what it means to have a sexual orientation and how it affects all parts of our lives beyond physical pleasure, and the way an oppressive religious background can deeply harm individuals in the LGBTQ community. I hope you enjoy. Well, welcome. Welcome to Queer RelationTips.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things that I think is most profound is the courage that you've demonstrated throughout kind of just your story of discovering who you are and coming out, and the way that your coming out happened. It was very it was very public. I'll just say it that way. And I think that
Sure.
took a lot of courage. There's these moments when we go back behind the door when no one's with us, and we have to confront the reality of what just happened in front of millions of people. As much as you'd like, kind of tell us what that coming out journey was like for you.
Yeah. So for those listening that might not be familiar with my story, I toured around the world in a Christian rock band called Everyday Sunday for quite a long time. And during that time, I also married a woman and grew up in that evangelical world and, very conservative Christian family, and like so many of us. And I, had been raised to believe that being gay is a choice, and that choice is an abomination to God. And if you are that way, you're an abomination. And never wanted to be gay, and I thought God would be angry at me. I thought my family would be angry at me, and I wanted to do whatever it took to be the man I thought God wanted me to be. And I also, grew up very much a hopeless romantic, which I still am. But I had this belief that because of the way I was raised, that God wanted me to fall in love with a woman. So anything that I felt towards other guys was not what falling in love was supposed to feel like. It wasn't what crushes were supposed to feel like. And so through all that, I just really compartmentalized all those emotions. And I always wanted to know what it was like to fall in love. I wanted to know how that was supposed to feel. And I even remember in my early 20s coming home from tour. I signed a record deal with my band when I was 21, and I remember coming home and having these late night conversations with my mom, like still in my 20s, not really understanding what crushes were supposed to feel like, because I felt like, again, that it was supposed to be with a woman, and I thought, that stuff that I felt towards guys was just either a temptation from the devil or just my desire for male intimacy, but definitely not gay. and and so, I just still had no concept of what it was supposed to feel like with a girl. And I remember always being told, oh well, it's not like in the movies, and I was like, well, okay. So and when you don't really have anything else to base your experience off of, it can be pretty confusing. And so during that time touring, there was this girl from my home church, mega church we both grew up in. I started going there as a teenager, but grew up in a small Calvinist church before that, actually. But at this church, I was really close to this girl's family, and she was home from college. I was home from tour, and a big group of us were hanging out. And I remember thinking that night, like, man, I need to meet a girl like her. She's great, and we have fun together. And I thought, well, could I? Is that what what is that what it's? Could this be it? And was always wondering that. And so I was really nervous to actually jump into a relationship with her. I was close to her whole family. And after, I don't know, 6 months, she kind of officially became my girlfriend, I guess. And then after another year, we got engaged. After another year, we got married. And, before we had gotten married, I'd never even made out with a girl. And so that was very it was very easy in purity culture to not have even a hint, right?
For sure.
And I didn't want to have a hint, but I didn't know. I couldn't relate because I was trying so hard to push down my feelings towards guys. And I didn't think that was supposed to be what it felt like to have crushes or falling in love. I could not relate my relationship with her to how my other guy friends maybe quote unquote struggled with their staying pure till marriage.
Sure.
Which kind of makes me cringe to say out loud now. But I just definitely grew up in that culture. And so went into my wedding hoping, praying, fingers crossed that everything would just magically work. And it didn't. And it was such a scary, taboo thing that I never could talk about what I felt deep down inside or those struggles with anyone, including her. And, we always struggled in that intimacy department, but we tried. And all of a sudden I found myself 2 beautiful children later, and 7.5 years later into this marriage where I was still hoping that things would get better, like the same things I was hoping the first week of our marriage. And so it was just a really tough, difficult journey to finally come to that place where we were able to have a real conversation about our struggle with intimacy. And so, finally, after 7.5 years, for the first time in our marriage, she asked me if I was gay. And, we had both kind of come to a more affirming position for other people. And I definitely was progressing in my faith, coming from that faith background on that journey. But, it still had never felt like an option for myself because I'd committed my life to this person. And I was still very much compartmentalizing how I thought about it for other people versus how I thought about it for myself. And so it wasn't until 7.5 years into our marriage that I decided to get help. And over that couple months, finally admitting to myself for the first time that I was gay, and then coming out to my wife at the time and my family. And, our kids were pretty little at the time. Liv was 5 turning 6. And Beckham had just turned 2. And so, that was 4 years ago that I came out of the closet to myself and my family. And it's pretty wild to think about now, just how far that I've been able to come mentally and, spiritually and just emotionally, how much it's really affected my life to finally be able to stop trying to suppress that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's some of the things that shocked you about being out and learning about your body, what it responds to?
Sure. Wow. Yeah. I mean, the first thing that pops in my mind when you say that is there's a lot of the firsts that I've had since then, right?
Yeah.
And allowing myself to feel a crush for the first time and not feel any guilt or shame about it,
Mm-hmm.
and those butterfly feelings, and
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's what they're talking about. Oh,
Sure.
to the first kiss, to other firsts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just and all of a sudden, like, I mean, very joyous feelings a lot of the time. Most of the, I mean, definitely all the time now, but especially at first when those were first happening, it was like there were so many emotions of grief, in the sense that I can't believe it took me this long to finally allow myself to experience this.
Mm.
And all of a sudden I'm somebody in my 30s experiencing what most teenagers do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And young adults. And there was a bit of grieving going, wow, that's tough that I never allowed myself to experience this. And then also just like, yeah, oh my goodness, I can't believe, like, this is what love songs are written about.
For
This is
sure.
what this is all these things that I've heard about my whole life and always wanted to understand, and
Yeah.
I've been hiding from it because I grew up being brainwashed to believe that my feelings were terrible. And so yeah, I think just seeing how my body responds versus the way I wanted it to respond with women, and it never did. And then to finally, like, I don't know, to finally get to experience that is pretty wild.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sexual orientation is a powerful force. I think in certain areas, specifically around um, like the ex-gay Christian movement and conversion therapies and things like that, it's almost like mind over matter. And if we just kind of figure out the logical loopholes to jump through, and that somehow sexual orientation is so fickle that we could enjoy this kind of heteronormative experience.
Sure.
And the body is constantly saying not only no, but I can't, or I don't want, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, it's and it's sad how many countless um millions, maybe more people have had to experience that, right? Experience that devastation of finding out that your body is saying no, and that there's no, like, willpower you can have that's going to fix that. And you think about how tragic it is that so many of us grow up being taught that we're broken, that something is wrong with us, and that and then taking that on yourself and feeling the guilt and shame as if you did something wrong.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such a speechless experience. Like there's no words for it to say, I didn't choose this, but somehow I'm doing something wrong. It leaves us in this ultimate state of powerlessness.
Yeah. Yeah. And that doesn't only affect us, but it affects everything around us, right? Because it affects the decisions we make. It affects the way we act. And, obviously, um, in cases, whether it's like somebody like me who ended up marrying someone who, you know, obviously she didn't deserve that, but she grew up in purity culture too, where we were both very, like, much virgins going into this thing that, we were blind to, right?
Hmm.
And I would argue that's not the healthiest way to teach a child growing up to have to find out, right? And so, you know, it can be extreme in those situations, but it can be extreme in whether it's depression or suicide or whatever it is. You know, I see the effects that it's still having on my family, and especially the ones that are still fighting the fact that I'm gay, right? And it's sad. It's sad that you know, how it's even really torn apart our relationships, and how just a lot of my fears came true as a kid that I thought I wouldn't. You know, it's a big difference to be loved for who you are and to be loved in spite of who you are, and you can very much feel that difference, right? It's one thing for your family to always be proud of you and the stuff that you're doing and love you for who you are and go, oh yes, like, I mean, isn't that like the joy of a wedding, right? You go and you celebrate who this person is, and your joy that they have found someone that they're being with. And when you find that there's those same people that are supposed to love you no matter what, and they say they love you, but all of a sudden you're going, oh wow, you're not proud of me anymore. You're not ready to celebrate me anymore. You feel this deep sense of shame about who I am and this, that I'm broken. And those are, it's amazing just, how much effect that has on countless people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Relationships are hard. Family, partners, love, sex. Life can be overwhelming. Over the past 10 years, I've sat with individuals and couples and have heard stories of hurt and hardship, stories of struggle and pain. I've helped people explore questions about life. Queer RelationTips is offering a unique opportunity to come on the show and sit with a therapist to talk about whatever you need help with. Relationship with your family rocky? Having trouble with your sex life? Considering an open relationship? Exploring your gender identity? Love life at a standstill? I'm here to sit with you and talk about it, with hope that you will walk away stronger. For more information, visit iamclinic.org. That's iamclinic.org. One of the things that you're kind of bringing up for me is this idea that sexual orientation is not necessarily about who we enjoy sleeping with, but it's the mechanism that guides us towards that life-changing love on the most deep layer. And I think it's so odd that religions who find their premise on this idea that God is love in a sense would be so unwilling to accept love in its fullest spectrum. It's so counterintuitive and in many ways hypocritical.
Sure, it's sad. It's just it doesn't make sense, and I think that's why so many people in communities that live in fear, religious or cultural or whatever, they want it to be this taboo thing you don't talk about, and there's a lot of fear when you start to have those conversations, because all of a sudden you find out, there's actually a lot that's not making sense here. Why would this God we want to put our hope and faith in create me this way, and to be able to love so well this way, and then be angry at me for doing so, and then want me to be either? And I think the changing in that fundamentalist world is shifting from it being a choice to now they just want you to be celibate and lonely and miserable the rest of your life, because that somehow keeps them from having to deal with it, right? And that taboo world is, I think, a big part of what got me to where I got to make the decisions that I did. And as somebody who grew up with an uncle who was married and had 2 kids, and all of a sudden, as a child, finding out that he was HIV positive and he passed away during the AIDS crisis, and all of a sudden that was this taboo thing that our family just didn't talk about.
Right.
And, I think about me and what I've gone through, and then I think about my kids and my nieces and nephews, and I look at my parents, I say, you guys have 10 grandkids. Like, there's a decent chance somebody's going to be on that LGBTQ spectrum. Do you really want this family curse to keep repeating itself? Because that's what happens when you don't talk about it, when you don't deal with it, when you don't process it. And I found that to be very true in my life and in so many others.
Yeah. What have you learned about love after coming out?
Love. Good question. I I I don't know an easy answer except to say that I've allowed myself to experience it more and healthier and better. I think it makes a lot more sense to me now, and I don't even say that in the sense of being in a relationship. It's about the way I love myself, and because one, I haven't been in a relationship, so I can't speak a whole lot on that, but I can say that I understand a lot more about what it's like to fall for someone, to experience those feelings, I have been able to have a lot of beautiful experiences, and been able to date, been able to build beautiful relationships. And I am definitely the person that, as much as I'm a hopeless romantic, I also think beautiful relationships come that aren't meant to last forever. And I think maybe I've learned a bit more about that, and just what it's like to experience these beautiful moments with people, but also I mostly just really how to love myself without feeling ashamed, without feeling enslaved anymore to this fear that I wasn't enough, that I couldn't be enough, that's not what love looks like, and that's not what people need. And they, whether it's my kids or my former wife, it was a huge thing for me to figure out that one, that I was never going to be what she needed me to be, because I was trying really hard for a long time to be everything she needed me to be, and it took me a long time to realize, I'm never going to be that, and that's okay, and that she deserves more than that, and neither of us deserve the torture of not feeling like we were enough for each other and not knowing why or how to process that. And just like what I was saying earlier, it's been 4 years. When I think about where my mental state was 4 years ago to where it is now, it's amazing. I just never knew it was possible to feel this way. And it's good to talk about it, because it reminds me, like I was in such a crippled state emotionally for my whole life, because there was this major part of myself that I did not know how to deal with, couldn't deal with, didn't want to deal with, and was scared to deal with because I didn't want to be an abomination to God.
Right.
Yeah.
Such beautiful motivation, but such devastating effects.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're talking, I kind of hear the popular slogan almost as a contemplative mantra, like love is love is love is love. And when we think about that directed towards ourselves, as you're describing for us, it's this beautiful way of deconstructing shame, but almost kind of like this mechanism that drives us towards just beautiful authenticity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it seems like you've kind of lived that out, that mantra, which I think is really spectacular.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel so much gratitude to be where I am today, and to be I don't know, be living my truest, best, most vulnerable self, and that my kids get to see that. And hopefully as they see me choosing to be my best self, they know it's okay for them to choose to be their best self. And as I was saying before we got recording here, I just hosted a weekend here in Columbus, where I live, with guys from all over the country that a lot of them were married and came out of the closet and have moved on. And some of them were actually just recently out to their wives and still living in that marriage, trying to figure out what is next for them. And I just the biggest thing that that struck me when I was going through that was just that feeling of realizing, oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful when kids can grow up with both their parents in the same home and not have to go back and forth and have that split home of what divorce can do. I think divorce sucks. Like, it's shitty, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But with that said, my kids or anybody's kids seeing their parents get divorced is not the end of the world for those kids. It does not mean they have to grow up traumatized and emotionally destroyed. But in our case, it was honestly the healthiest thing for my kids, to get to see their parents be their best, healthiest, truest selves. And for that to happen, it meant mommy lives in one loving home and daddy lives in the other loving home, and them getting to experience two parents that absolutely love them, that are living their healthiest lives. Mm-hmm. And we came to the realization that there is absolutely no way for us to do that by staying together. Mm-hmm. And staying together in a miserable state that isn't healthy for either of you is not what is best for your kids. For sure. And it just took us a long time to figure that out. And obviously, for me to be able to finally accept myself and to go through that and to allow myself to grieve all of that loss as well, and to kind of find that light on the other side of that grief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the momentum of your coming out kind of took you across the country. I mean, you were on The View, you've performed at Pride festivals across the country. How rewarding is that work for you?
The work is very rewarding. Just like as far as being able to share my journey in a way that people feel like they want to share their journeys back with me, and to hear stories constantly of how I've been able to be a part of someone's life in a good way, and has helped them in some way. And as we both know, that there's no one thing that helps somebody find freedom, but it's usually this pile of things that stack up that allow someone to find the light, right? And to find that breath of fresh air finally, and to just be a part of that for other people. It feels really beautiful. And I think, myself as somebody who grew up in that fundamentalist Christian world, that, was very influenced by like that culture and by like Christian music culture as a teenager. I could tell you huge Christian rock stars to this day who are very much in the closet. And if one of them would have come out when I was a kid, I think about how that could have affected my life, right? Mm-hmm. And I just thought, as I was going through all this when I was coming out, I just thought, man, if I could do that for somebody else, how much I want to be able to do everything I can to try to keep people from having to go through that hell of accepting themselves or through anything like that. And so I'm very grateful to do the work that I do, and to share my journey and my art in ways that hopefully continue to make a difference in people's lives.
Mm-hmm. You're so bold. As I kind of watch the projects that you create and the things that you include in your lyrics and in your music videos, you're quite an intrepid force for coming from such a conservative evangelical background. It seems like you really believe in the beauty of authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as somebody, I've been writing songs, for over 20 years now, since I was a young teenager. And I don't know, to all of a sudden, like, have this thing about myself that I was pushing down my whole life. I really think that affected my art as well. And so, like, I feel like when I came out, not only was there this huge part of myself that finally burst open, but there was this huge part of my creative self that felt like I had tapped into, that burst open. And I've just constantly been thinking about how can I use my art in a way oh, to make a difference and to challenge people to think in new ways, different ways. But also, I just feel like I have found this inspiration of things that I want to write about and that I want to say, because I feel like I have so much to share right now, and I love that feeling, and so yeah, I think in some ways it just feels like things have flown through me and come out of me, and that feels fantastic. But I also have felt like these huge things on my heart that I just really feel like, how can I share this in a way that causes someone's heart to stir, or mind to maybe at least think about it for the moment, and get lost in it a little bit. And so I've really had a lot of fun with doing my album and my songs, but also the way I've tried to use my music videos to try to do that as well. And I don't know, I'm constantly thinking about that, so it's fun.
Mm-hmm. It's fun to watch.
Thank you.
Where can people find your work? How can they hop on the Trey wagon?
Yeah, sure. So if you go to TreyPearson.com, I think all the different ways you can find me are on there. I think all my handles are at Trey Pearson on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and then I think it's Trey Pearson Official on YouTube. But I think if you just go to my website, that's probably the easiest way.
Awesome. Great.
Sure.
And how can other people who might be in a heterosexual marriage, who are needing to come out or needing support, because it's very, very rare, how can are you planning other retreats? Are those coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, so I'm getting ready to do another retreat in Salt Lake City, and we're already looking at stuff for late spring, early summer. But I would again just say to go to TreyPearson.com. But I would say the way to be the most in the know about those things is to join my safe space group on Facebook. It's just called Trey's Safe Space. It's a private group, so you can find it if you search for it, but you can't see who's in there unless you're a part of it. And so that group is specifically it's a group of thousands of LGBTQ people sharing their journeys and stories along the way. And there's a good amount of allies in there as well, which is pretty cool. But I'm always updating people with my Safe Space tour, where I go and share my journey around the country. And then, this will be my 4th Safe Space weekend coming up, which is, I just had my first one a year ago. So I feel like I did not realize I would be doing this many already, but it's fun. It's good. Awesome. And it's been amazing to see a couple of things. It's weird now that I've been out 4 years. I'm just like, oh, I can't believe the country's so far behind on all this. but if you would have said that to me 4 years ago, I would have just been like, obviously still in my own state of crippling fear. And I realized constantly how many, as far along as we are coming, which I do believe we are, and I do believe the world is changing fast, there are still countless people being marginalized and oppressed. And we have a lot of work to do
Mm-hmm.
to continue to change that and help people to keep from having to grow up in those kind of environments. And I don't know. I think as long as there's work like that to do, I think you and I will have a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm just happy to be one small voice that's trying to contribute to that.
Sometimes it can feel like guilt and obligation, and that would be the illusion that we control how other people feel. But oftentimes it's a way of learning and practicing connectedness. We do our best. We're always trying to figure out how to treat each other with respect and love. And we want to love ourselves, even when it feels like we're contradicting our desire. But one thing that Trey has taught me is that it oftentimes takes an incredible amount of courage, massive courage, to confront our deepest desires, those that have been labeled as dirty by culture and religion, and to embrace them as clean and beautiful, not just in a way that allows us to move forward in our behaviors and actions, but in a way that we hold them internally as clean and beautiful and worthy of being expressed. And in my opinion, expressing those desires is evolution at play. We, one action at a time, one desire at a time, get to embrace that which is actually innocent and incredibly beautiful. And as we express it, we liberate other people to express and live freely within and among themselves. Coming out as gay, especially if you've been married and living in a heterosexual relationship, can feel like the most devastating season of life. It feels as though we're not only ending our security and our stability and pulling up these deep roots out of the ground only to feel aimless and void of security, but we also fear that we will hurt everybody around us, especially if children are involved. One of the things that we do not talk about in our discourse of sexual orientation is the role of emotional intimacy. I've had many clients at iAmClinic come saying, "Hey, Isaac, I'm in a heterosexual marriage, but I need to come out." And one of the first places I start working with them is identifying what emotional intimacy has looked like and what it looks like in their marriage. By no means am I an ex gay or conversion therapist in any stretch of the imagine. But I do want to acknowledge that sometimes when it feels as though we need to come out of the closet, we begin pulling away from those who we share the most emotional intimacy with, leaving the relationship, whether it be the marriage or family relationship, rather dry. And in that dry context, we're making major decisions for our life and the direction that we'll move in. It can feel as though we're making decisions in a very lonely place we would rather leave, specifically because the emotional intimacy has diminished. I identify as bisexual, and so I believe very firmly in the idea and the premise that emotional intimacy plays an incredible role in our sexual activity, our sexual arousal, our libido, the direction towards which our orientation might be pointed. Have there been times when I've shared deep emotional intimacy and it made the person more sexually arousing? Absolutely. But I'm bisexual. I have this fluidity in my sexuality. Some might even call me pansexual, and that would be just fine. But for people who find themselves on the extreme of this spectrum of orientation, who only identify or whose sexual orientation is only pointed at the same gender, emotional intimacy will play a similar role, but it will not open up the body towards this expanded way of being attracted. So if you were to identify as gay or lesbian very, very cleanly, then emotional intimacy is going to play a very profound role in your life. But that expanded way of seeing emotional intimacy influence sexual orientation, I would say, won't occur. And that might sound like I'm being a little narrow minded, but I actually think that's relieving for a lot of gay and lesbian spouses who need to come out. As a bisexual person, I think it would be rather important for me to understand and repair the emotional intimacy in my relationship so I'm making decisions out of authenticity rather than fear, out of full knowing rather than a limited way of seeing my marriage and the world and my life and my sexual orientation. If you are someone living in a heterosexual marriage and you're contemplating coming out and wondering, I'm sure with a lot of fear, what you'll do with your marriage, I have a couple of pointers. The first one is to take an inventory of what is true about your sexuality. What activates it? What doesn't activate it? When do you feel aroused and when do you not feel aroused? I also recommend taking this massive inventory about how you have felt sexual orientation in your body ever since it turned on. When did you first know you might be attracted to the opposite gender or the same gender? When did you first have an experience of feeling a crush or visual or emotional arousal? What was it like for you to hold this knowing within your body? Collecting the language around your own story will not only help you move forward in confidence because you know who you truly are, but it will help make any transition you confront as smooth as possible because you'll have this rich data bank of knowledge, of language to share with those around you so you can create the most accurate and clear picture for their understanding. The next step, I think, would be to find people who are a part of the community so they can help support you and share tips that they've learned along the way. We all need each other. Again, we are designed for relationships. I absolutely love Trey. I love the work that he does on the planet. And I encourage you to follow him. Trey's Safe Space is a gorgeous opportunity for people of all walks of life to find that tribe, a place where they can truly belong. Queer RelationTips is a podcast sponsored by iAmClinic, a counseling practice devoted to the LGBTQ plus community with in-person and virtual counseling options available. iAmClinic. Create the love lives and relationships you crave. Find us online on Instagram at LGBTQ_therapy and Facebook at iAmClinic. That's iAmClinic.